I've literally been waiting so long to make this video, or to make any videos. I grew up watching YouTube. I started making videos when I was in college. And as soon as I started succeeding, I got really scared and just quit. I was also really busy with school. But I have always wanted to make videos. I don't know why, I just get so nervous when I'm sitting down and making one. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Maria, and I am on Instagram. I somehow built my following to almost 150,000 within a year. I have a podcast called Influence Me, where I talk about my journey with my friend Alex Manzana Curve on Instagram. We talk about our journey kind of navigating these uncharted waters of social media. As people who are mentally ill, I have bipolar disorder and PTSD. And I just wanted to share a story with you because I imagine there are a lot of you out there right now who feel hopeless or feel like you may not want to continue going. And I'm just here to share my story to hopefully encourage you to either get help for your mental health or feel inspired. So I always was a people pleaser and an overachiever. I wanted to make my parents happy. I always wanted to make everyone else around me happy. And I didn't really think about what would make me happy. I went to a fancy college. I was lucky enough to get federal student aid to go there. And I just didn't feel like I was making my own choices up until this past year where I started posting on Instagram. And it has been a whirlwind. It's a really crazy experience to blow up on the internet. There's a lot of good things that come with it, and then there are a lot of bad things. I kind of want to demystify the whole like having a platform thing, because before I had one, I was really fascinated by people who already had them and what it takes to grow, and all of that stuff was just really interesting to me. So I just dove into it head first, did some research, and I am where I am today. So I want to share a story. It's difficult to tell, but I think it needs to be told. So since I kind of always was taught to equate my worth with external things, like the college that I went to, or the job that I had, or, just external things like my appearance, my weight, all of these external things. I was kind of brought up to determine my value based on these things. And that coupled with the fact that I am a people pleaser, which I'm working on, was a recipe for disaster when I entered my working years. So I had a string of really bad jobs where my bosses had no boundaries with me, and I was harassed. I just had really a string of bad jobs, and I kept thinking, well, the most common denominator is me. So what am I doing wrong? And then I realized that after finding a job that nurtured me and was a supportive environment and a healthy environment, I realized that I wasn't the problem in those jobs. It was the job environments. And I just want you to know that your worth is not dependent on whether or not you're employed, whether or not you're at your goal weight, whether or not you are rich, no matter how much money is in your bank account. Your worth is not based on any of that. It's based on you, your heart, what your soul. No one can ever take any of that kind of stuff away from you. So here's my story. I was working at a job that I was being bullied in. There was a group of girls that I tried to befriend, and they begrudgingly let me kind of be a part of things, but they were really just talking behind my back, and I was aware enough to know that they were doing that, and it was just a mess. And I'm not a perfect person, so I'm sure I did things to contribute to the toxicity of the work environment, but it was taking such a toll on my mental health. I was smoking cigarettes, I was chain smoking them. I was spending all my money because I was so miserable that the only thing that made me feel good was spending money. And it wasn't a high paying job. I've never worked anywhere that has paid me like what other people are paid in the industry. And that's partly my fault, and that's partly the fault of my employers being discriminatory, but it was a really bad environment, and the company culture was super toxic. They'd basically have parties where they get really drunk and be inappropriate. And at the end of the day, though, I always did my job and I worked as hard as I possibly could. And I take pride in my work. I enjoy work because I like completing tasks, and I like customer service, and it was a very customer service oriented job. So the work part of it, like the actual work I was doing, I didn't mind, but I started getting really depressed and stopped showing up for work as often. It was in part due to the fact that I was being mistreated by this group of women, and it's really sad, but it's kind of a recurring pattern in my life where I grew up and I was severely bullied by girls in my school. I actually switched schools a bunch of times because it was so bad. I was overweight as a child and very awkward looking, and it did not help me in any way, shape, or form. But I've learned through doing lots of therapy that if you have been preyed upon in the past, people can sense your vulnerability sometimes, and they'll be more attracted to you, and they'll be more inclined to maybe take advantage of you. So I just want you to know that if you're consistently in relationships with people where they mistreat you, it's not your fault. Relationships are a two-way thing. There's responsibility on both sides, but if you find that you're constantly in the same patterns with people, it's probably because you are trying to repeat the pattern so that you have a better outcome. And that's a whole other topic for another video. I'm sorry, you'll have to bear with me while I accumulate to YouTube and get better at it. But anyway, so I gained a bunch of weight, and it was a problem because my health started deteriorating. I stopped taking care of myself. Like I said, I was smoking cigarettes. I just wasn't enjoying life at all. I was very unhappy, but I felt so depleted that I didn't have the energy to look for another job, and I felt so down on myself that I didn't have the energy to even job hunt, or the thought of creating a resume just sucked the life out of me. As someone with bipolar disorder, bipolar depression, I can say is one of the most debilitating things you can experience. It's literally imagine laying in bed and having to go to the bathroom or go get water, but the bathroom is 5 miles away and you're really tired. It mobilized me. So I did miss some work. But then I felt like because I was so good at my job that would kind of even things out. And they knew about my disabilities because, they didn't know about my mental health problems, but I have a lot of health problems. So I didn't think I was in danger. So it really threw me off when I received a phone call from them firing me. And I remember on the phone breaking down and crying, and it was really uncomfortable. And I actually support my mom, and I felt at the time like I went from being a help to her to being a burden really quickly. And I just want you to know, if you feel like you're a burden, please know that you're not. You are deserving of having your needs met, regardless of whether or not you can afford it. Like, our society is so messed up and treating people differently based on, you know, whether or not they have a job. Anyway, so me, this overachiever who's always trying to please people, I got fired. And it's something that I never thought would happen to me, just because of my strong work ethic, and my reviews at the company were, performance reviews were always stellar. And I mentioned it when they were firing me, and they said, well, we're just making some changes. And they actually made me sign a non-disclosure agreement, and they offered me a sum of money, and said that if I ever spoke out about the company, and I'm not naming them by name, I don't want to get into any trouble, and I don't want to direct any negativity towards them. I'm beyond that now. But I felt like at the time I had to take the money. So it was a small sum of money to exchange for my silence. And I went ahead and accepted it, and then immediately fell apart. It hurts so much to lose my job, because I felt like my worth was at that point 100% dependent on my income, because my income was what allowed me to pay my bills. It's what allowed me to help my mom pay her bills. And suddenly losing that was such a shock. And then getting unemployment, it took like 3 weeks to get unemployment or 4 weeks. And luckily, by the time I started getting unemployment, I had found another job. And it was crazy going from feeling like the floor had been ripped out from under me completely to suddenly having something back again, having a job again. And it taught me a lot, because I had a breakdown while I was unemployed. And luckily, I'm very fortunate that I wasn't unemployed for a long period of time. But it made me realize some things that I hope you can realize if you're going through a similar situation. It's so silly that society tells us that we are, like, the most important thing is making a lot of money. It's, of course, as someone who's grown up in and out of poverty, I can tell you that money helps make a lot of things easier, but it also complicates things. So I started working at my new job, and I really liked it. And I found out later that the owners of the company, the ones that fired me, when the pandemic hit, they fired a bunch of their employees and bought a private plane. So that to me, like, hearing that made me realize it's an honor that they rejected me and said that they didn't want me anymore. Like, if they're that way, if that's like if they don't have hearts, I don't want to work for them. And I'm sorry if you're out there and you have a job and you feel like you can't get out. I want to tell you that you can. And there are a lot of different things you can do to get out of your situation, whether you're in an abusive job or you're in an abusive relationship, or if you feel stuck, I'm promising you that there's a way out. For me, that way out was being creative. So I started my Instagram because I was like, I'm always on Instagram, like, all the time. I might as well put stuff out there. And I would always think about my YouTube channel and how sad I was that I had abandoned it. But I was scared of people's eyes on me. I was scared of people seeing me and judging me and leaving mean comments and going through getting fired. That really changed me a lot. It made me fearless in a way. At this point, I'm not going to say that I don't care if I get negative comments, because of course I'm a human being. Negative comments have an impact, but they don't take me down like they used to. And I don't want anyone out there who has the potential to be creative to stifle that because they're afraid of how others will react to their work. So something that happened to me at a very early age that impacted me a lot. My dad had an art gallery, and he asked me to make some art for a show that was coming up. And then at the show, he decided my art wasn't good enough and took it down. And that's just kind of like a pattern that repeated throughout my life. I'd show my parents, I used to draw, I'd show my parents my art, and they'd either act like, oh, that's nice. Like they just withheld, praise. And I felt that. But I have this fire inside of me, this desire to be creative and to help other people, because I'm fortunate enough to have access to a really wonderful therapist. And it breaks my heart that people out there don't have access to therapy. And if you do have access, I really, really encourage you to get into therapy. It has changed my life. If you actually listen to what the therapist has to say, and if you have a good relationship with one, it can be absolutely life-changing. I went from being inconsolable, completely unable to regulate my emotions, to managing my bipolar disorder and PTSD well enough to handle having an online presence, which is very draining, can be very draining if you go about it the wrong way. So I don't know, it's been weird. I go into things full force, and I went into my Instagram with the intention of building a platform so I could share mental health tips and to try to soothe people on a large scale. And I feel like I've been hesitant to make YouTube videos because I feel like when you make a YouTube video, you're just kind of revealing even more of yourself. And there's this feeling when you have a large following of being exposed. And if you're not someone who likes that necessarily all the time, it can feel a little bit like you have, I don't know, I feel like I get anxiety. I have anxiety. So I get anxious when I get really anxious sometimes just thinking about all the people that are looking at me. But the real success came when I stopped caring. And I had to get to a pretty low point to stop caring. So I realized that all of those people that I was afraid would make fun of me or judge me, that I'm not the center of the world. They're not thinking about me all the time. And if they're not thinking about me all the time and being like critical of me all the time, then what's the, like, I don't know. I started thinking rationally about these irrational anxiety related thoughts, and I just stopped caring. And I don't know, I've always felt like a loner. Like I've always felt like I never really had a group of friends that I felt were real friends. But I'm glad that I waited, and even if you think this video is bad, I promise it'll get better. I'm glad I waited until I was a little bit older to try to build myself online, because I've learned so much since when I started making YouTube videos to now. I've learned so much, and I really like that I started with Instagram, because there's something about Instagram that is less feels less like I'm being exposed less. Like being like a YouTube video makes me feel very vulnerable, whereas posting a picture and a caption feels a lot less, I feel a lot less vulnerable doing that. But I'm learning to become comfortable with feeling vulnerable, and it's really important to do that. I say a lot too. I'm gonna have to work on that. But anyway, my point is, if you are jobless right now, if you're homeless right now, your worth is not dependent on your job. Your worth is not dependent on how much money you have or can bring in. It hurts my heart to think that anyone out there feels the way I felt when that happened. And it's easy for me to say now that you can get help and that you can get out of it. But when I was in that state of mind, I didn't think that was possible. So I'm just here to tell you that it is possible. And I don't want a large number of people following me so that for like vanity purposes. Of course, it's like a boost to my ego when people compliment my appearance. And it's very humbling to have so many people want to be a part of my online life. Maybe I stopped doing YouTube videos because I'm not very good at it. Anyway, the point is, I'm trying to build a platform so I can share information that I think people would find helpful, and to try to share messages with people who are not feeling well or not doing well. And I have a Discord server that I invite you to join that is just a place where you can vent or feel like you have community. It'll be linked in my description. You can also follow me on Instagram. I'll link my Instagram there, and please subscribe if you haven't already. I promise my videos are going to get better. If I learned anything from building my Instagram, it's that you learn as you go and you improve as you go. That's at least the way it is for me. So I welcome you to join my Discord server, follow me on Instagram. It's going to be easier to contact me through Discord, just so you know. But yeah, I just wanted to make an appearance on my channel and say some hopefully comforting words, and I hope that you really absorb the message that I have to send, which is that your worth is, you have intrinsic worth for just existing on this planet. And I recommend that if you have a lot of extra time on your hands right now, that you listen to soothing podcasts, do all of the self-care that you possibly can, take baths, make sure you're taking care of yourself in every way possible. Don't sabotage yourself. And remember that if I could get through what I got through, you can get through what you're going through. All right, thank you so much for watching. I hope that this video wasn't painful to get through. But thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to making another video soon.